It's a vision that says up to 50 million Americans have to lose their health insurance in order for us to reduce the deficit. Who are these 50 million Americans? Many are somebody's grandparents, maybe one of yours, who wouldn't be able to afford nursing home care without Medicaid. Many are poor children. Some are middle-class families who have children with autism or Down syndrome. Some of these kids with disabilities are, the disabilities are so severe that they require 24-hour care. These are the Americans we'd be telling to fend for themselves.
All right, there you have it. After years of lecturing the United States and the people of the United States on the importance of bipartisanship and civility in American politics, that was the tone the president struck earlier today as he unveiled his proposal to cut the deficit. And his game plan couldn't be any more clear. He wants to scare you, the American people, into opposing the Republican budget plan that actually addresses the nation's deficit crisis. Joining me now with reaction, Fox News political analyst, the one and only Juan Williams. Juan, good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you, Sean.
All right, so let's go to this in detail here. This vision, he's talking about the Ryan plan, is a vision that has 50 million Americans losing health insurance to reduce the deficit. Many are people's grandparents that can't afford nursing homes or Medicare. Many are poor children. Some are middle-class families, children of autism or Down syndrome, kids that would require 24-hour care. They're told to fend for themselves. Now, I don't know any other way to put this except this is a lie. That is... he is demonizing people with untruths.
How's that untrue? The fact is that in the Ryan budget, 2/3 of that budget, the money that's saved, and Paul Ryan says he's going to save about $6 trillion, Sean, comes out of programs that serve the middle class and poor and seniors in our country. Paul Ryan says when it comes to Medicare, let's make it a voucher program, the premium program, and everybody who's looked at it, all the experts say it's going to cost seniors more. And they're not going to have the same benefits under Medicare. No, all experts. And what about the poor? What about Medicaid? Medicaid would be a block grant, and there'd be a race to the bottom, every state saying we're going to provide less. That's how he's going to save the money.
Look, this debate is reckless, it's dishonest, it's ugly, and it's mean-spirited. And I'm going to tell you why, because what the president is saying, just like last week, Republicans want to, let's see, it's like bombing innocent civilians. Republicans, the GOP in Washington, want to kill women. This is what Congress is saying.
That's not the
And my point here is it's Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security going bankrupt. To save the program so that people will have the benefits, they are trying to save it. They're not trying to deny kids with autism or kids with Down syndrome or old people to die. It is a total, complete political mischaracterization.
Let me just say, what Paul Ryan has done really deserves a lot of credit because he went first and he put himself in a very dangerous position. I think that's why tomorrow, in terms of the vote that you're going to see in the House, they're going to lose some Republicans. Republicans know that because Paul Ryan stuck his neck out, Barack Obama and the Democrats really now can make them a target, especially for the seniors, as you were saying. But I don't think that it's wrong, Sean, to say that the Ryan budget does punish the poor in this country. And why? He's getting all this stuff, all these cuts. Something like you say, oh, he wants to save Medicare and Medicaid. He wants to diminish those programs. They will serve fewer people, and they'll give less money to the seniors. So that's not good, Sean. American people don't want that.
They're on a path to bankruptcy. That's just a fact. The country... No, let me finish. We're headed to bankruptcy.
Okay.
So if the country goes bankrupt, we don't have any programs for anybody. So to get the budget in balance and make tough decisions, we've got to come up with a new paradigm.
Correct.
And he's saying, let the states do it. We'll bypass the bureaucracy in Washington. The money will be better spent. We'll save it and preserve it for future generations. And you and the president saying they want old people and kids to die.
No, Sean, but you can't do it in a draconian fashion. You can't come in and just whack it. What you got to do, and this is what President Obama was suggesting today.
It's over 26 years. This is not over. This is over 26 years.
Sean, he wants to whack it, and let me just tell you this. You can instead change the program by restraining its growth. Americans think it's a good idea, for example, to raise the Social Security tax in terms of the cap so that people who make more continue to pay. And Americans think that, by the way, Sean, I know you're going to really flip out in this and get mad at me, but I think that there's no doubt about it. Americans think that people who are rich also have to share in the sacrifice about balancing our budget.
Look, I live in New York, 40% federal income tax, 10% state income tax, the second highest property tax county, Nassau County, where I live in, ridiculous sales taxes, hidden taxes, about 55% plus of my income goes to the government. How much more do you want?
Well,
how much? What's fair?
Are you doing well in America, Sean?
Wait a minute. But how much more of my money has to go to the government? How much do you feel you have a right to take in your plan to redistribute
Nobody
wealth?
has a right to take a dime of your money.
I go to jail if I don't pay.
No, that's taxes. In other words, your lawmakers, your elected officials say, you know what, we need taxes. We want to have a stable society. We don't want to have Brazil and have Sean living in a gated community and spit at people in his Mercedes-Benz. No.
Well, first of all, I don't have a Mercedes-Benz. I have a hybrid.
Well, okay.
But the point is, in all fairness here, is 55%. Am I being generous enough?
Yeah,
is 55% fair? I mean, is that fair?
That's 55%. More than half of your income.
More than half.
You choose to live in Nassau County or whatever, and you make a lot of money.
I work here.
But I'm just saying, Sean, the fact is that in terms of our GDP, I think we're at the lowest in the last 60 years in terms of the tax rates for all Americans.
I want to say, I think you're right. We got it to each and every American based on their needs and from every American based on their ability. That's got to be the new philosophy.
Well, I think that what my philosophy is.
That's Karl Marx.
Shared.
Share.
I thought that was your philosophy.
No, that's Karl Marx's philosophy.
Okay, no.
That's Marxism.
I think that we have got to share this burden. If you agree that taxes right now are too high, you'd also have to say, you know what, the deficit is too high.
Right, spending is too high. And this is my problem. Republicans are responsible, and they try and do the responsible thing.
Well, why don't they pay taxes?
Everybody pays, Juan.
They're not paying a lot.
The bottom 50% of wage earners pay 2.9% of the federal bill. The rich are paying their fair share.
You know what I noticed? Wall Street's doing great. Wall Street's doing great.
They're paying their taxes. The people that work on Wall Street, they're friends of mine.
They're ripping off. When Obama bails out Wall Street, then you say, oh, why did he bail out Wall Street?
I didn't think he should.
Those guys are getting big bonuses. They're not sharing any sacrifice
My last point
right
to you.
now.
The government, this is like Republicans bombing innocent civilians. GOP in Washington wants to kill women. They don't want women to get mammograms. Hang on. 6 million seniors will not have food. This is from Pelosi, Reid, Slaughter, Eleanor Norton Holmes, and everybody else. And here's the point. How are we ever going to reconcile how bad our debt and deficit is and the country headed to bankruptcy if this is the rhetoric when responsible people make a proposal?
I think when you have responsible people make a proposal, you won't hear language like that. But when you have people who say, we're not having any tax cuts.
Ryan's irresponsible.
That's irresponsible in an era in which you, Sean Hannity, say, you know what? Deficit spending's out of control. Government's too big. Most Americans, Sean, don't agree with you on this.
Well,
the polls are very clear. Medicare, Medicaid, don't crush it.
You are really wrong, but I like you anyway.
You're a gentleman.
And coming up, it's a clash of civilizations as protests are up in France over the nation's newly enforced ban on full Muslim veils. But first, the devil may be in the details when it comes to the president's deficit reduction plan. Look, we're going to take a look at what those measures really mean for you next. And in just the first 6 months of fiscal year 2011, the deficit has already skyrocketed almost 16% to $829 billion. Now, at this rate, America is on track to hit a record $1.6 trillion deficit in this spending year alone. And in a very stern warning issued yesterday, the International Monetary Fund said the U.S. lacks, quote, credible strategy to attack our nation's mounting debt. And in order to meet last year's international pledge to have our deficit by 2013, we would need to implement the toughest austerity measures this country has seen in 50 years. And just how does President Obama plan on doing this? Well,
we cannot afford $1 trillion worth of tax cuts for every millionaire and billionaire in our society. We can't afford it. And I refuse to renew them again. So my budget calls for limiting itemized deductions for the wealthiest 2% of Americans. A reform that would reduce the deficit by $320 billion over 10 years. I say that at a time when the tax burden on the wealthy is at its lowest level in half a century, the most fortunate among us can afford to pay a little more.
Oh, okay. So I guess deficit reduction is just really code for tax increases. And here with reaction, former RNC chairman Ed Gillespie from the Fox Business Network. Sandra Smith is here. I view today's speech as the first speech Obama gave for the 2012 election. This was a political speech. You agree?
It was a screed. You know, it was a total lack of leadership. And the fact is, when you look at it, it's not going to be seen as very serious because it was not serious. These policy proposals, raising taxes, just in December, when he extended the Bush tax cuts, he said we need to do this because it'll help grow our economy, spur job creation. And I guess we don't need to do that anymore, so we're going to raise taxes by $1 trillion?
Well, this is it. We're back to this. It's same old playbook. Demonize people that he disagrees with. You know, the Republicans, they don't care about kids that need 24-hour care. They don't care about kids with autism and Down syndrome. They don't care about grandparents. They don't, you know.
This is serious stuff. If this is the most serious stuff, and the president stepped up there today, gave it a second shot, and we got nothing. There was nothing new. There was no specifics about cutting spending. In fact, all it was about was raising taxes. It did not go into depth about anything possibly that he was going to do to cut down this deficit. We've been talking about he's been ignoring the voters from the November elections and what they wanted. Sean, cut spending, less government. But now it comes down to they're not even listening. The IMF just came out and said this is urgent. United States government has to change their ways. The spending has to stop. This is serious stuff.
We're getting lectures from China, from socialist European countries about capitalism. It's a little frightening. But Ed, you've been around a lot of campaigns.
Yeah.
The quintessential Democratic playbook. Raise taxes, cut defense, demonize Republicans who want to be fiscally responsible. It's the same old playbook.
Warfare. And class warfare. And talk about, we're going to tax the rich when, the top 1% are already paying, between a third and 40% of all federal income taxes. Yeah. About half of earners pay zero federal income taxes. So this is total class warfare politics. It's bad economics and it's bad policy. And this IMF, uprating the United States is remarkable. But I've been saying, because they realize that President Obama is not serious about reducing our debt. He has DAD, deficit attention disorder, and he won't focus on what is most important right now in our economy, which is lifting this drag off of our economic growth.
From an economic perspective, the last thing you want to hear is talking about taxing the rich more. I mean, you're talking about, in some cases, households that are making $250,000 a year. They probably don't feel rich in this country.
This is also, but we're back to the small business argument. Here we are, we have, at best,
jobs.
Well, anemic economic growth, anemic recovery, and the president is going to tax small businesses, the bigger part of those evil 2% rich people that he's describing.
The job creators, the entrepreneurs, the small business owners.
The taxpayers.
He's targeting them, the taxpayers. Look at who he targeted in this speech, which you just said sets the tone for his campaign.
Yeah. Well, the question politically then is, you talk about the economic side of this. Does this strategy have any chance of working? We don't have a Republican candidate yet. We don't know who it's going to be. They have to go through their primary process. But he, I think, is banking on this old playbook working. Will it work?
Well, the Democrats resort to fear often in these situations. You mentioned senior citizens and are going to hurt, elderly women.
Now it's kids with Down syndrome and autism.
Right. They had that iconic poster for the last campaign, with hope. And I think they're going to replace that for the reelect with fear. That seems to be the playbook that they're going to run on. I don't think it'll work. And by the way, this, class warfare is not going to work either. Most Americans believe that we need to reduce spending, not raise taxes, and certainly not at a time when we're trying to get our economy going.
The funny thing is he said today again, I will not sign this. He just did this back in December, after he said repeatedly all throughout the campaign and the early part of his presidency he wouldn't extend the Bush tax cuts, and he did it. So it seems like the rhetoric of Obama, the teleprompter reading, and the way he governs are two very different things.
And just when we thought he was going to stand up and lead today, he did more finger pointing. I mean, he called the Republicans' plan deeply pessimistic. He actually went as far as to say that it would fundamentally change America as we know it today. I would ask you, don't you think that's what the American people actually want to hear right now? We need to change. We
need to change from the change.
Yeah, well, because most people, when they voted for him, a lot of people, when they voted for him in, the last election, they thought they were voting to change Washington. They didn't think they were voting to change America. And that's what he's been doing for the past 2 years. And people are saying, wait a second, stop. That's why we have a Republican House today.
It seems like we are on a major collision course, though. I mean, the Ryan plan, the lack of specifics in the president's plan, class warfare versus responsible governing. I don't know how you reconcile these things.
Well, and it doesn't look good. I mean, he basically stepped up there today, all anticipation, every network focusing on, everybody watching this thing, and there's no plan. There was no specifics, no plan.
But it sets up the 2012 election. Two very distinct visions for the country.
Biggest election in my lifetime, bar none. I think biggest election, really of the century. I know that sounds, overly dramatic, but honestly, if the president is reelected and gets 4 more years, it will be a completely different, we'll be like a really big Greece or a really big Luxembourg, but we will not be a free market-based economy after if he gets
wholeheartedly, I think. All right, guys, good to see you. Thank you. Appreciate it. And coming up, a new French law banning Muslim women from wearing full-face veils is sparking outrage across the European country. And then later, it's another case of a TSA screening gone way too far. Look at that picture. You got a 6-year-old girl subjected to a pat-down, and it's all caught on videotape. That and much more coming up straight ahead on Hannity.